interest, do you ever make comparisons with the animal world, whether it be insects or birds or?
Quite a lot. I mean, there's quite big communities. So looking at, exactly drawing insight from, swarms of birds and ants and whatever, try to link it back to human movements. So yes, there's been quite a lot of those sort of analogies. And of course, there's always a limit of how far you can take the analogy in terms of, solutions and so on.
Do they ever have the big clashes like we do? Overcrowding and bumping into each other?
Other ways to cope with it. So like ants, they have organize themselves in several layers on top of each other, which obviously humans can't do. Yeah. There's a few different differences in there.
Yeah, it's kind of, I thought it might be an obvious question. Let's take some questions from the audience. Anybody there like to ask a question to Anders? You see, you gave us such a lot of information. I think we hardly need any questions. But anyway, I'm going to ask you another one. Which city do you think, from your research, works really well on all levels? Do you have a favourite city?
No city, I think.
Yeah? No.
I think there aren't any city that works really well at all levels. So I think such a city does not exist. But
well, when you're doing your research, say you're doing your research on London or in Bristol,
sure,
and you're making recommendations because you can see that there are certain clash points or roads need to be wider. What kind of recommendations do you make, and how do you make them?
Right. So I mean, so part of it is informing a planning process, right, which is the traditional ways you would use these sort of models. My area is mostly in the operational kind of time frame. So once things have been built, so how to prevent and how to run places in an efficient manner. So I think these sort of models and tools can fit into different types of process and different kind of timescales. But obviously, so one example is before you build something, I think nowadays some of these tools are pretty much kind of standard tools to use to test the dimensioning of buildings to make sure if you build something for a crowd of a certain size, quite often nowadays you run these models before to make sure there is seems to be enough capacity before you actually go into the construction phase. I think you can use it in different phases. Well,
I thought certainly was it the Canary Wharf model you had for evacuating the building? Yeah. Things like that could be very useful. How else can you help architects and designers in ways like that when they're planning buildings and designs?
Right. So again, I think there are various ways you can run this model. So one is the kind of you finish your architectural design and you test it and see it's almost a true-false outcome. Will it work or not? And if it's true, you get on with it. If it's false, you maybe run through a few more iterations to fine-tune it. The other thing is maybe alternative solutions proposed, and you can compare them and see how does scenario 1 compare with scenario 2 and scenario 3, and you can compare them and see which one seems to be the best one, and you can kind of go for it. So I think it's yes, all these different areas really, which I think technology and modelling is quite useful kind of tool in that context.
But certainly things like we would come across in an everyday in London would be underground, and if there's a big match on and you're near the Arsenal where I live quite near, there's so much overcrowding in the underground. You're almost afraid that there's going to be at the bottom or the top of the escalator, there's going to be the pile-up. Do you get involved in that kind of stuff?
I haven't done much underground work myself, but similar things. And I think linking back to Til's talk really, so I mean part of it is making sure there's enough capacity on a kind of normal day. So make sure that if you have a population of a certain size and you have you know roughly where people live and work, just making sure there's enough capacity. And the other thing is coping with kind of anomalies, because you always have the variations, as you saw in the previous talk, where you always get some irregular peaks in different places. So I think it's really both of those sort of areas to be able to make sure there's enough capacity on an average day, but also coping with all those small differences over day, and make sure we have built resilient systems. Obviously, if there is some localized problem, you don't want to cascade across all the network. You want to kind of contain it, and I think some of these tools can be useful for that as well.
And I suppose the Metropolitan Police would be quite interested for crowd control, or for if there's going to be a march, or if there's going to be some kind of a protest, that they might be able to kind of help use data and see what they can.
Yes, possibly. So yes, I suppose any kind of crowded place, such tools can be quite important. Again, so one thing is crowds kind of security and control is slightly different from some of these other areas. Of course, depends a bit where your focus is as well, I suppose.
No, it's fascinating. Well, please put your hands together for Anders. Thank you. Thank you very much.